Oklahoma Sooners get a big transfer portal commitment.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year over at monarchmoney.com. I'm John Williams. This is Jay Smith. And the Oklahoma Sooners picked up another transfer portal commitment, this time coming from Ricky Lolohea from Utah State by way of Oklahoma State. The Euless Trinity defensive tackle committed to the Oklahoma Sooners late on Tuesday evening.
Yeah, we talked about him on Monday. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what his true size is, but he is at least 6'3", we'll say that. But he's roughly between 305 and 330. But he brings you in another big body that works probably best in the zero technique. And he could be that player that's good for development. He's young, so he's a redshirt freshman. So that means that he'll be going into his redshirt sophomore year, going into next season. But he's someone that's going to be able to grow with the current regime of defensive linemen. This really gives Todd Bates not only a project for the future, but also someone that's going to be a really good practice body for our offensive line in preparation of going against these big boys in the SEC.
Yeah, it's one of those that will help Oklahoma now, solidifying that defensive tackle, in particular nose tackle depth. But it also, like you mentioned, gives Oklahoma somebody to develop and somebody to add to that nose tackle rotation. After Dominic Williams goes off to the NFL after this season, you're looking at Jaden Jackson, Lolohea, maybe Marcus Strong playing that nose tackle spot. And you feel good about your three technique, that other defensive tackle spot with David Stone, Trent Wilson, maybe even also Marcus Strong, and then also what they're doing in the 2026 recruiting class. The Oklahoma Sooners depth is looking really, really good, but you did need another legitimate nose tackle piece. This is a guy that will line up over the center or just shading one side or the other over the center, and he will eat up space. You know, he played 145 snaps for Utah State. His most snaps, Jay, when I was looking at him a little bit earlier, the most snaps he played in 2024 came against Washington State. So not only did Nate Dreiling have an up close and personal look at the kid when he was the interim head coach and defensive coordinator at Utah State, Nate Dreiling, now Oklahoma's linebackers coach. Well, Oklahoma's offensive coordinator and quarterback got a front row seat to what Lolohea was capable of when they played Utah State in the 2024 season. So just another little interesting nugget there, but this is a dude that's just going to take up space, and you're not going to get a lot of stats out of your nose tackle, and that's okay. Their job is to eat up blocks so that everybody else around them can eat.
Yeah, and that's really the most important thing is you want a guy that, like you said, a big-time space eater and someone that makes teams have to double team and to have to pay attention to him. And again, we're not saying that he's going to walk in and take the starting job from like a Jaden Jackson or a David Stone or, thank God David Stone came back, or even a Dominic Williams or even Grayson Halton. He is a project, but he, again, gives you another component to work with. And that was, like you said, the one thing that Oklahoma needed coming in this portal season was we weren't looking for starting defensive linemen. I think we probably have one of the better two deeps in college football, period, not just the SEC, in not only Dom, Jaden Jackson, Grayson Halton, David Stone, and Marcus Strong. You add a Nigel Smith when healthy, you've probably got yourself one of the better defensive lines in the country, at least top five. You still need to have additional depth. Trent Williams is your only true freshman you brought in, and so you need that additional body, and Ricky gives you that. He gives you someone that will, in practice, cause problems. And again, at his size, if he is closer to the 330 range, or if we get him to the 320, 330 range by the time the season starts, he's going to be a load for our offensive line to have to work with. And that's just going to help sharpen them in preparation for all these SEC defensive linemen we're going to see. I mean, Tennessee's putting in work. Texas has been all over the portal like crazy. I mean, we don't see Georgia yet, but if we do, exceed expectations and make it to the SEC championship game, there's a very good chance we see a Georgia. Ole Miss is always living in the portal. So everybody you're playing against is always trying to better themselves on that side of the ball. You want to be able to better yourself as well as add guys that can help you sharpen that offensive line because they're going to be put to the test. We do believe that the two deep there is strong, but at the same time, having pieces to push them is always a plus. So like you said, Nate Drilling, seeing him up close and personal and understanding his capabilities or potential, he probably said, hey, Bates, you may want to go ahead and look at him. Nagy, give him a call because there's a chance that he could turn into something similar to what we got out of Jaden Jackson.
Well, you can't simulate size.
Nope.
And you cannot replace it. It's hard to find. And again, these nose tackle types a lot of times will fly under the radar because they're not going to have flashy stats. They're typically not going to show out in one-on-one drills at, recruiting camps, things like that, because your job as a nose tackle is just to get upfield and push the center back into the quarterback. You get this guy, and again, somebody who's flying under the radar, and you have a chance to develop him into something over the next 3 years. If he becomes part of your two deep, or if he becomes a part of that rotation at defensive tackle, that's a huge win for the Oklahoma Sooners. But at the very least, you got a guy that, like you mentioned, is going to push your offensive line. He's going to give Troy Everett something that he's going to have to deal with that size and that strength on the interior, or Jake Michaela, or Eddie Pierre-Louis, or Fabechi Wiwu. Like, your scout team just got better because you got a guy with this kind of size, this kind of strength. And listen, coming out of Euless Trinity, this kind of tenacity, a dude that's going to play tough, play physical, and really get after people. So again, it's a good pickup. Oklahoma's not going to be done in the portal. They're going to have several more additions coming as well. It wouldn't surprise me if they continue to attack the defensive line and try to stack depth and stack talent where they can. But again, cornerback is probably where we're going to go next on defense if they're able to find a guy that really fits what they want to do or fits what they like. And we're going to talk about a position and a player that they're pursuing at wide receiver coming up here in a second. But this fits a lot of what they're wanting to do at this point in the portal. If you're not finding legitimate starters, you're finding guys that have years of eligibility remaining so that they can continue to develop those guys.
Yeah, and that's probably the defensive line wise. I don't see us going after any more defensive linemen in this portal cycle. I could totally see us doing that in the recruiting side because we definitely could use some more young bodies to go right behind Trent Wilson so that you are developing going forward. Outside of that, though, looking at the portal, feels like linebacker, you could use one more young body, someone that's in the range of a Samuel Mosigo, redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore area, and in a corner as well. In the corner, you want a veteran because your young pups, you're very much in love with them, and you know that they're going to be something of long-term potential. So you don't really need to get an additional young corner, but a veteran is always great to have just in case your three veterans in Eli Bowen, which technically Eli's not a veteran, but Eli's one of your better ones, a Gentry Williams, who you're hoping his shoulder comes back to normal, and then Kendall Doby, who's most likely going to play a lot more corner than he probably will cheetah going next season, but he probably will shift around nickel and do a lot of different stuff. If those three come back pretty healthy, you may not need the veteran corner, but it does sound good to have a dude that can be 6'2", 6'3", a nice sized guy that can keep up with SEC type of receivers. Jacoby Johnson's the guy that we would like to get to that point. I just need him to stop tripping over his own feet. That seems to be the one thing that he enjoys to do. He does a very good job of it. Like, he's not getting burnt. He's not getting dusted in any way, shape, or form. It's just right when the pass is thrown, he just trips. And he'll get better. His footwork's going to get better. So I'm not concerned about the talent. We could just use a veteran that can step in there in that moment. So expect more conversations when it comes to the defensive side of the ball as far as the portal. But I think we're done at defensive line. I think that'll be probably the focus on the recruiting instead.
The Oklahoma Sooners are pursuing another wide receiver in the transfer portal. Who dat?
Yes.
We'll talk coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, having kids, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year over at monarchmoney.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Jay, the Oklahoma Sooners are pursuing wide receivers in the transfer portal. We know that they've offered Keelan Marion and have been wanting to set up a visit, trying to get him pulled into Norman and hopefully not let go the BYU wide receiver transfer. But they've also offered another wide receiver in the transfer portal, Jer'Michael Carter. He was an unrated prospect coming out of high school out of Louisiana, also similar to Giovanni Gibson. Played at McNeese State in 2023 and 2024. In 2024, led the Cowboys in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns, and accounted for 22% of their passing yardage, Jay.
Yeah, and that team was not a passing team. I mean, their starting quarterback threw for 1,000, and then they had another quarterback on there that threw for 900. So they weren't really, and then a third quarterback that threw for 300 yards. So you're looking at 2,200 yards-ish, and they aren't a team that passed the ball much. They ran the ball a lot. They had 4 running backs with over 200 yards rushing, one with 800, one with 300, one with 300, one with 200. So they were more so on the ground type of play, and that's just what was their game. Well, Jer'Michael went out there with his 500-something yards and 3 touchdowns and just stepped up and stepped out. I think the thing that jumped out to me the most is that he is a Louisiana boy. Similar to our guy, Giovanni Gibson, as I told y'all before. He's from, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it again. It's Opelousas, or whatever, Louisiana. I don't care. I know I said it wrong, but y'all understand that. Jer'Michael is from Kentwood, Louisiana. So got another Louisiana boy. He's 6'4", 192 pounds, and he's only a sophomore. Guys, we would love to have additional projects at that size that we can have, because what we're doing today, and it seems like the team feels comfortable enough that Giovanni and Jaden will be back roughly around the season starts. That's most of your hype. You still got Ivan Carrion, who's trying to, get acclimated to this level. Manny Choice is a true freshman who can figure some stuff out. But you still want to have some of those bigger receivers to be super threats. Jer'Michael could be one of those. We saw that Giovanni was probably going to be wide receiver 1 because he's just that talented. He was just truly underrated. Heck, maybe his grades weren't at the right spot, and the reason why he did not get picked up at a young age. But Jer'Michael could be in a similar situation. Coming from McNeese, I understand what everybody's going to say, but when talent is talent, you go for the talent. And I think Jer'Michael's got the opportunity for it.
And sometimes you need an opportunity to prove that you're capable of getting a better opportunity. And it seems like he's gone and done that. He entered the transfer portal on Monday, the 21st. And since then, he's already received interest from Utah, Colorado State, Vanderbilt, Baylor, UConn, OU, and West Virginia. So listen, a mix of intriguing schools there. We know Rich Rod out at West Virginia is going to try to have a prolific offense. Baylor's offense is on the rise. And obviously Oklahoma is looking for some size on the outside because of Giovanni Gibson's injury, Jaden Gibson's setback earlier in spring ball. Aside from Keontez Lewis, you don't really have a lot of collegiate production at outside wide receiver. It's all kind of inside with Isaiah Satania, Deion Burks, Jacob Jordan. So you need to find a little bit more depth, guys that can play on the outside and are going to be able to physically hold up against the more physical cornerbacks that you'll face in the SEC. Jer'Michael Carter, this is a big opportunity for him. And obviously he's getting a lot of looks across the country. And I imagine that those offers will continue to grow as the transfer portal days wane on. But this is just another sign that Oklahoma doesn't feel satisfied with where they're at wide receiver, even though they've got some really young guys with a lot of potential in a Zion Kearney, Manny Choice, Ivan Carrion, Elijah Thomas. It's a good group of young players, but there's not a lot of time to kind of just sit and wait for these guys to develop. You've got to have an answer at every position across the board. And this just, again, is a sign of Oklahoma's desire to be aggressive and trying to improve their depth throughout.
Yeah, and it's not a knock on any of the young players or whatnot. It's just the fact that they're young. And once they go out there in the field and show us, be a different story. Like, we talked about this numerous times here. I think that Zion Kearney's at the point where he's probably going to be the next guy to step up. He feels like the one that's naturally probably going to be your number 2 wide receiver with Giovanni Gibson as your number 1. I see Zion Kearney as your number 2. I think he's getting to that point. He's got the size, he got the strength, and he looked pretty solid in a lot of the videos we saw from practice. The question is, how does the 2 deep go down and how the rotations go? You kind of want somebody that's going to be a veteran and someone that's going to be intimidating. Like, and we know Satania and Burks are going to be an issue for a lot of the teams. If Keontez Lewis is healthy, he's probably going to start causing problems for other teams as well at 6'2". You want Giovanni and Jaden back. Then you really got yourself a tandem of 4 wide receivers. You can really be just threatening for everybody. Well, if they come back and they're healthy before game 1, all of it's moot. Like, we want Keelan Marion is a very good pickup opportunity because of the return game. That's a return guy. You ain't got to actually play him at wide receiver a lot. But you can play him when you need him. But he's much better at the return. Now, with this, I mean, you've still got guys that can do return. You know that Satania is a really good return guy. Jaden Ott, you may not want him to, but he's actually pretty solid at the return game too. Josiah Martin probably can as well. You may not want to, but, what hurts you to be able to play them there? You want to make sure that your wide receiver room has, for Emmett Jones, he wants enough experience to be able to help fine-tune what you're getting out of your wide receivers. That's more so the bigger case here, John. I think we can get that if you add a player. I think adding a player of Jer'Michael's capabilities, he's more of a project, but he's got something that you can't really teach, which is size, as we talked about in the last segment.
And he's a guy that took advantage of his opportunities. Like you mentioned, they didn't throw the ball a ton at McNeese, but when he got the ball thrown his way, he created big plays and he was able to lead the way for that offense in the passing game. So I like that aspect of it. Just that, okay, maybe he came from a lower level school, but he was the leading receiver on that lower level school and by a lot, like there were not a lot of touchdowns thrown. He was the only dude that I saw that had multiple touchdown receptions on that team. So he's a good player. Again, sometimes you just go roundabout ways to get your opportunities at bigger opportunities and bigger schools. And listen, he's going to have an opportunity somewhere. Hopefully it's at Oklahoma because they could use some of the depth on the outside. And this isn't to say that some of these young guys couldn't emerge and become a starter on the outside just this season. Right. You just don't know that right now. And do you want to head into fall camp with the expectation that, hey, your young guys are ready to step up and step out and break out? Okay, if you saw enough in spring ball that you feel like they're on that upward trajectory, then okay, by all means. But if you're just not sure, then yeah, add some more competition. Find a guy that you think can solidify the room a little bit more and go from there. And he's going to have multiple years of eligibility left as well. And so that's another piece to the puzzle that I think is going to matter in this one as well. The Oklahoma Sooners have a bit of a quarterback dilemma going on with the 2026 recruiting class. We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, the Oklahoma Sooners 2026 recruiting class is in a really interesting spot right now. Jaden O'Neal, the 4-star quarterback, has been committed since last summer, and Oklahoma is pursuing Bowe Bentley. Part of Daniel Odom's commitment to Oklahoma, I think, somewhat hinges upon Jaden O'Neal. And yet it doesn't feel like anything is solidified at quarterback. Jaden O'Neal's got official visits set up, even though he's still committed to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's heavily pursuing Bowe Bentley. I think they'd like to have both quarterbacks as part of the class, but that just doesn't seem like that's going to be the reality by the time we get to the early signing period. Josh McCuistion of Sooner Scoop put out a really, really good article on Tuesday, just talking about how this whole thing just feels weird, and it's probably heading towards the likelihood that they're not going to have both quarterbacks as part of the class.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like to me, if there's anything on this, everybody needs to just lay their cards on the table. That's kind of, I think we're at this point now. It's starting to get weird. Yeah. And not even on the O'Neal side of it. It's more on the Oklahoma side. Got to call them out on this. If you don't want the kid, if you feel like you're going to go ahead and move forward, move on, then do that. Because based upon the interviews, now this is only one-sided, of course. We're only really hearing from the O'Neals because they're the only ones that's really answering this question, is what the communication is like and how everybody's talking. And it doesn't feel like Oklahoma's making all the warm and fuzzies happen. When you're recruiting a quarterback, you need to make the warm and fuzzies exist. If the warm and fuzzies ain't existing, then ain't no reason for a quarterback to feel like they want to be there. Because remember, when Jaden was initially recruited, he was the only quarterback that was expected to be in the class. And now he's not. And if that's the case, you need to have that conversation and say, hey, man, we really do want to have multiple quarterbacks. Or it's, we think we want to go a different direction. And that's okay. If that's what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with that. But you got to tell the kid. That way, which I'm very happy that he's actually doing these visits, John, because Jaden O'Neal needs to make sure he has options. And I know a lot of schools are very interested in him because he is talented. A lot of schools like what he's able to do. And it does seem like that Ben Arbuckle has a particular aesthetic he wants. He wants a quarterback that's a lot more mobile. Like Jaden can run, he just doesn't really do it. He usually uses his arm. Similar to kind of like Shedeur Sanders did. I talked about that before. Same thing with Cam Ward. They ran when they needed to, but they typically always launched that thing. And that's Jaden's similar game. But it feels like Ben wants the dual threat capabilities to go in his offense. And like I said, if that's the case, man, let the kid know. Let's just go ahead and let that be done.
Yeah, it just feels like it's stringing along right now. And, Oklahoma's kind of keeping Jaden O'Neal part of the class or keeping him around as a backup plan, as a just in case, which is a shame because the kid is really, really good. Yeah. And, there will come a time when this gets resolved. When that happens, who knows? Jaden, he stayed committed to Oklahoma after they fired Seth Luttrell. Seth Luttrell was his primary recruiter. Yep. He still wants to be a part of the Oklahoma Sooners, it seems like. It's just, it doesn't necessarily seem like Oklahoma is feeling the same way. Now on Bowe Bentley, he's getting offers all over the place. And he spoke with the folks over there at On3, or was it Rivals? I can't remember. Rivals. Thank you. Talked about how, he's got a growing connection with Coach Arbuckle. He's new to the program, but seeing his history with quarterbacks in the past, like Cam Ward and John Mateer, showing me how I can fit into the offense means a lot. Having Heisman winners in past years, obviously about Oklahoma. And here's what he said about the offense. They're quick offensively, a high tempo offense. And the way they run things is similar to ours here down at Salina. They want to dominate. They want to attack. They're not going to hold back and try to put up 50 points on you. So, Bowe Bentley seems impressed with what he's seen with Ben Arbuckle and with Oklahoma. It's just, again, that's going to be a big time recruitment because the top programs across the country, LSU, Georgia, are in on Bowe Bentley as well. And you're going to have to win a significant recruiting battle if you're going to win his services.
Yeah. Everybody wants, honestly, both of them. They both have a large enough crowd of teams that know that they're talented and they would go to either one of the two. So Oklahoma's going to have to, be smart about this. Go ahead and buckle down and make a decision. Now, if they're going to heavily recruit both, up that communication with Jaden and let them know that you're still our dude and we would love to have you. Stop playing around. We're kind of past the point of playing around when it comes to when it comes to Jaden O'Neal. If you want him as your other quarterback, if you want to do two, please do what you need to do to work closely with him to make sure that he's comfortable and he understands that he is truly appreciated and he's wanted. I think that's where most of this comes from. It's the making him feel like he's a dude that you want to have at quarterback. You got to make your quarterback feel warm and fuzzy. I don't care what anybody says. That's just how recruiting goes. You need your dudes to feel good about what's going on, make him feel like he wants to be. You want him there.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then he'll want to be there.
I mean, every prospect out there wants to be wanted.
Yes.
Like they want to feel like they're a top priority. You hear that from, players all the time. They make me feel like I'm a priority. They make me feel like I'm a priority. That kind of stuff matters. And, you don't have to have that. If Oklahoma is the place you want to be, you're going to go there regardless of whether or not that they make you feel like a priority. At the same time, when you're a coveted prospect and you're going to have options across the country at the Power 4 level, there's going to be other schools that make you feel like a priority that also will have an opportunity to develop you into a really good college quarterback or an NFL quarterback. And Jaden O'Neal, Bowe Bentley, they both have the tools to be very successful at the collegiate level. It's just, where's the best fit going to be? Where's the program that's going to make you feel like you're the number one priority? And right now, it doesn't seem like Oklahoma's doing a great job at that on the quarterback recruitment as far as with Jaden O'Neal's, as far as he's concerned. But it just makes it especially awkward considering Jaden just moved to Mustang and transferred from California to Mustang. And it's just a weird dynamic and a weird situation. And again, hopefully it gets resolved sometime in the next few months, like as the summer approaches and, official visits are happening and Champ U barbecue and all these things are going down, that there's a little bit more of a resolution to all this, because you don't want to string kids along. You don't want to string families along. You don't want to start creating that reputation. And I don't think it's going to get too much further down the road before Brent Venables, Ben Arbuckle have just a clear and honest conversation with everybody that's involved.
Yeah, I agree. I think that somebody level heads are going to come in here. Hopefully we'll have a decision or at least a idea of direction within the next month. I'd say because June is when you have OV season. So I'm expecting something to happen within that point. And I think that I know Jaden and the O'Neals want to be at Oklahoma. Heck, they're at Mustang for a reason. They want to be closer to here. They want to recruit for Oklahoma. They want to play at Oklahoma. They just want to feel like Oklahoma wants them as well. And the best thing that Oklahoma can do is show the love and let him be the heavy recruiter that he is. I mean, he's got kids that wants to follow him. He has kids that like the idea of playing ball with him. So Oklahoma needs to leverage that. They need to lean into it and have this elite talent on their roster. So we'll see what happens over the next, like I said, couple of months. Hopefully Oklahoma and either Jaden O'Neal, I mean, once Bowe Bentley, if we win the commitment, that's probably going to be a good sign of determining what's going to happen next. We'll probably get a decision by somebody as far as if there's going to be decommitment or not, and what Ben Arbuckle wants to do and how he wants to run the offense. We just need it's going to hinge on Bowe Bentley, and it sounds like Bowe Bentley's probably close to leaning into committing to Oklahoma, probably around the end of OV season.
Yeah, a lot of players want to make their decision before their senior year, so we should have an answer. I say should. There's a likelihood that we'll get an answer on what Bowe Bentley's collegiate future looks like over the next 3-4 months. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams, and you can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner. I'm glad we got another defensive tackle, though. That is a big pickup.
Stack the DTs.